The old history goes on back beyond fly fishing. You know, back in the early days, the people gathered walnut bark, walnut root, and the walnut root was peeled. The bark was taken off the roots. It's strong, real strong, and also the walnuts themselves have that covering, and they use that covering, to put in sacks. And they put these sacks out in a river where it's kind of deep water, still water-like, where it's not moving too much. And they put the sacks at the upper end of the big hole, and the juices come from the walnut bark and the hulls. It wash down into the big holes where there's fish. And the fish, it kind of, it kind of addles them, I'll say. Addle, to use the word addle. It addles them until they can go out and they'll have big baskets. And they'll pick those fish up, kind of seine them out, and put them in the basket. And that's the way they did a long, long time ago. And then later on, even during that time, most of the people had horses, and the horse hair from the tail is long, and they'd take about 3 strands of hair and twist it, and put it all together and make a leader, a line out of that horse tail hair, and that's what they used as a line many years ago. And my dad, I remember, he'd always look for a white horse. He said it's a better, makes a better line from the white horse from the hair that comes off its tail. So they'd twist it together. They'd twist one, they had a little holder, like maybe 3 little nails up, and they'd twist one way and the other one the other way, and then when they put them together, they'd wind themselves up and make that line. And they also used the horsehair line for bait and for fly fishing. Now, fly fishing was the flies were made from a Plymouth Rock chicken. We call them Dominickers back a long time ago. A Dominicker chicken, and they got the gray feathers, and they used to find the real fine feathers, the pin feathers we call them, and they'd kind of peel them off the center part that's holding them together, and then from that point they would use a sinew and tie those feathers onto a fly hook and make a little small fly. And they'd make the wings, they'd make the tail of a fly, and they're real pretty, the guys that were really experts at making fly hooks. They also, a yellow hammer is a woodpecker. It's yellow, it's a yellow bird, and they like to use those a lot too. More of probably in the fall of the year they were used, and then the little black feathers come from mostly a black chicken, and it was called a black gnat, fly hook. It's kind of like a little black gnat, and you use them late in the evening when the gnats start flying, when it's warm weather. But now, to get back into the river and where you were raised here and understand the water. Late in the evening was a real good time to fish, just about the time the sun is going down, and that's when all the larvae is hatched and it begins to fly, and that's whenever you start using that fly hook amongst all those flies that's hatching out, and that's a good time to fish. Now, it's kind of strange to me, but I've been fly fishing for many years, I guess since I was just a young lad coming along. And some of the holes where the river kind of bends around, makes a kind of a bend, like right in here, kind of bends around, but not as much. But up in Big Cove, I remember my favorite fishing holes. Where the river bends into the bank, like, and comes out. You stand on that side of the water, and you fish. Let the fly hook go down the bend, and you can usually I'd usually catch a couple out of each hole, as I went along, and it was kind of strange to me that I could stand in the bend of the river and catch fish. And if I change sides and I come in from the other side and use the same fly hook, I'd never get a bite, never get a hit, never get a strike or anything like that. You got to know what side of the river to fish on and where to fish. Now, in real swift waters, I always go by that part and find more of a kind of a smoother place. I was looking at the far side of the river here, and it's a real good fly fishing hole there. And you would stand on this side. Now, if you stand on the other side and use the same fly hook, you probably wouldn't even get a smell. You wouldn't get a bite. So you got to know where to stand, and you kind of got to know how to stand too. You got to be real careful. And also, I see a lot of fishermen out here with white shirts on, and that's no good. To have a white shirt on or a bright shirt. You gotta have a kind of a brown camouflage, to go in. If you wear a white shirt, those fish, they see you right away and they're gone. And a lot of the old fishermen used to say those fish are educated. They know how to get around, how to get around the people, the fly hooks. And they know the real fly and the fly hook too, depending on how you use. You gotta let your fly hook just float natural, just kind of a natural flow down. Somewhere along the way, if he's there, why. And the big fish, we have some big brown trout in this river. They feed at the lower end of a big hole, a big deep hole, right at the lower end where the water is going over, and that's where they feed. So if you want to catch a big fish, why try the lower end of the hole where it's the shoals. Kind of makes the shoals, it goes over, and that's where the big fish are. Yeah, well, we used a lot of bait fish too. bait rather, to bait the fish. And we had a hellgrammite we call a grampus that stays under rocks. And late in the evening, when I was growing up, of course, my dad had a big farm, big cornfield and all that. And I worked in that field a lot, helping my dad. And late in the evening, he'd say we'd have maybe a supper, a bite to eat. Then he'd say, get the can and go out in the pasture. Catch some of those green grasshoppers. And I'd go out and I'd catch those green grasshoppers and put them in a little container. And we'd go fishing. And we fished at night. We'd fish way up till about 10 o'clock at night. And also, when we'd get to the river, we'd turn over the rocks along the river bank, and you'd find those big grampuses. They're big worms. Well, I call them worms, but they have two little pinchers like that, and big brown ones, and they're tough. And we'd catch a bass or a big rainbow from that big grampus, and you could use that grampus over and over and over because it was tough. It had a tough outer part of the body, you know, and that's what we used to catch the big fish. Yeah, we fished a lot of times. We'd fish way up. We catch some nice fish too, big rainbow, brown trout, mostly rainbow. Now, the fish that we have, they're all not really truly native rainbow fish that we have. A lot of people don't know, they don't understand this. But back when my dad was growing up, back in the late 1800s, 1890s, is when my dad was just a young boy, I guess, back then, 1895. And through there, why, he said that we caught a lot of just the little benders too, and use them for bait a lot of times. But getting back to 1895, there was a man by the name of Potts, or Pot, maybe Potts. In our Cherokee language, we call him Julowski, which means a pot. And that's the fish that was brought in from California. And we call them California's trout for a long time. And they're natives from California in the late 1800s. And a lot of people, they don't know this. A lot of the fishermen, they think those were always been here, you know, but they're brought in, imports, you know, from California. And a man by the name of Potts brought those fish in. And my dad said he caught the first one up in the Big Cove area. And he took it around and he showed it to a lot of people because they'd never seen a rainbow trout like that before. All they knew was those little speckled trout that grow back in the Great Smokies and back in the Big Cove section. So anyway, they are not native here, but people don't never heard that story before, you know, about how they were brought in. We did we had many ways of fishing though too, and a lot of times we'd use when I was growing up, we'd use the snare hook, you know, and of course we didn't snare the rainbow trout or anything. We had the big red horse in here at that time. We called him the big red horse, you know. they grow big too, and they got big heavy scales. But they're a native here. But we don't have any anymore. And then we also had the hog sucker. You know, he grow about like so. You know, maybe a pound. If he weighs a pound, he's a big heavy one, a big fish. And we snared them. We use snare hooks. Tie a little white cloth on the snares. And you'd see a bed of red horse down there, maybe 4 or 5, in a bed like. You'd throw the snares above and let them float down, and you'd watch that white rabbit. And when it got right to the red horse's nose or just anywhere nearby, you'd kind of give a little jerk there and you'd hook him. You'd get him out like that. So, and the hog suckers, they didn't stay up off the bottom of the river. They always kind of bedded down. They was all real still, and you could look in the river, and a lot of times you'd spot one, and and you'd get your snares out then, and you'd snare him. I went with my dad, and I remember I must have been 4 or 5 years old when I went with my dad. He'd take me, and take me out and show me a lot of things. And I remember he'd fish a hole. Of course, he's using bait, wasn't using a fly hook. And when he'd hook one, he'd pretend like there was nothing, and he'd say, "Here, hold this pole a minute," and there'd be a fish on it, and I'd always think that I hooked it. Boy, I'd get it all excited. Yeah.
And, where were you guys fishing at?
I was raised in Big Cove, so all back in that area. The area we lived in was, we call it Stony, the beginning of Big Cove. Have you been up in that area?
Yes.
Yeah? Past the new school and all. Up in that area is where I was.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Where I fished whenever I was. And then later on, as I grew a little older and older, I'd always go on my own. And then I started using a fly hook then, in later years. Fishing also, they had a tradition of fishing, the old folks did. And they'd always use, there's a little, I don't know what you call it. I know what you call it in our Cherokee language. It's called a nutchi, and it's a plant. And the plant has a long root, and it has some little, kind of like little berries on the roots. And they used to dig those and maybe have a handful of those little berries, like they were little small, come off the root. And a lot of the old people would take it and maybe dry them, maybe have a little basket of them hanging up on the wall. When they'd go fishing, they'd get a little handful of those little pebbles, and put them in their pocket. When they get to the river, they'd always take 2 or 3 of those and chew them up. When they'd chew them up and get them good, they'd spit on the hook, and then they'd start fishing. And from those little roots, they say that the fish can smell the aroma, I guess, called from those little pebble, little berry-like, and they'd always bite that hook right away whenever they chewed those. I don't know what they come up early in the spring, and they're kind of they look like a little speckled trout. The leaves do, they're coming up. And that's what they used, the old fishermen. And my dad was telling me that he and his friend were on a rock, big rock, big boulder, and they were sitting up on that rock. And it was a little ways to the bank, and they'd have to jump over on that big rock. And they'd sit there, and there's a big hole here, and they'd fish that hole. And his buddy hooked into a big rainbow. I had a time getting it out. They finally got it out. And he said he started to jump over onto the soil, onto the bank rather, from the rock. As I mentioned, there's water between them, see? And as he's going through the air, he dropped that fish, and it went down into that hole. I said, boy, they lost a big fish. So anyway, a lot of things happened. And then one man said that he hooked into a big fish, and he was kind of tightening up on his line. And back then we didn't have all this fancy fishing gear they have now, like the reels and rods and the automatic reels and all that. But we used cane poles, and just that one line, And this guy had hooked into a pretty good sized fish. And that fish was jumping, and he's kind of holding a tight line on that fish as it jumped. And the fish come off the hook. And it was still jumping like that after it was off the hook. And it somehow or other jumped up on the bank of the river. And he just walked out there and picked it up and put it in his basket. So anyway, he got a lot of fishing stories like that. And Big Hole was their favorite fishing places when they'd come in. A lot of people out of state, from here, always come in and fish. Man in Big Hole was George Davis. He was quite a fisherman. And then we have Lawrence Smith here at Cherokee. He was Wayne Rose. We had several fly fishermen back when I was growing up. So anyway, and a good time to go fishing, even right now, is just as the sun is going down. It's real late, almost dark. Well, it's not. It lasts maybe an hour yet, being, getting dark. And about an hour before dark is a good time to fish. As I mentioned, the larva is hatching, And then early in the morning is a good time too. If you can get up, real early, be out there early. But midday, my dad said you're wasting your time when you go fishing at midday. Yeah, you might get one, ever so often, but not like you would. And you mostly got to know where to go. Your fishing holes. And yeah, it's been back in the 80s. I remember 84. I was up in a national park fishing, and it was just getting late. I was just about ready to come in, and I got a good strike, and I didn't hook into him or anything, but the water just boiled up, and I thought, boy, what a big fish. I missed him, it's just coming out. I guess, maybe pulled too early, and maybe he even missed catching the fly too. Early that morning, I got up and I was back at that fishing hole. And I was across the river on the other side. And I flipped my fly hook out there. The second time I flipped it out there, I hooked into him. And I got him out. And he was a big, he was 24 inch the length. And he probably weighed about 4 or 5 pounds. I still have him at the house.
Okay.
If I'd have thought I could have brought him and showed him to you, on the board. I got him on the board, and he's got a big mouth like that. And got 2 sets of teeth, 2 rows, bottom and top. And, well, they can eat a pretty good sized fish, medium sized fish. And that's what they feed on, other fish, other smaller fish, Yeah, he's a great old big one. Anyway, another time I let this one get away, and there was 4 or 5 big brown trout. It's Mangus Creek Hole up here in the national park. And I went in kind of late in the evening, and I had just a small fly hook, it was a yellow one, yellow hammer fly hook. And I flipped it out, and when I did, just to my surprise, the biggest one out of that big crowd of brown come up, and he hit that. And well, I hooked into him. And I try to keep them in the big hole of water. I try to not let them, get out. And I was standing on the edge, and he made a big circle right way around. You just can't pull a big one out. You gotta let him tire out a little bit, and then start working him out toward the edge. And well, I had him going around. He went around maybe a couple times, this big hole, and then he started down. And I was trying to hold him back, trying to get him back up in the hole. But he kept going, and kept swimming on down. It got to the shoulders and went over. And boy, I had a lot of line out. And I started reeling my line in, and I started wading down toward where he went. And I thought to myself, I'm going to keep a tight line, keep an eye on him, and go around, and maybe I can shoo him back into that big hole. And, well, I could see him just above me. I got below him, and I could see him there. And anyway, I got to shooing at him. I got to splatter in water and try to work him back. And he made a quick turn around, whipped around real quick, and headed toward me, right where I was standing. And he almost went between my legs here, where I was standing in the water. Come right by and rubbed my leg, and on down the river he went. And he went pretty far down there, and my line gave way. Oh, I said, "Boy, you beat me." I've been beat. I said like that. But he had that some of that line in it. But they tell me they have a way to work a tooth out, a hook out of their mouth. So they have a way to do that, and he could probably got rid of that fly hook that was in his mouth. We used fishing as a livelihood, food. And we didn't catch. We caught just enough that we would be using, for a meal, or maybe a couple of meals, and that would be it. Maybe we didn't go out and try to catch 40 or 50 big fish, and back a long time ago, of course, we didn't have the cooler system, We didn't have the refrigerator or the any kind of way to keep food, and fish was one of them that we always had just enough to go around and get enough, have enough. So we was always very conservative with any kind of game in what we had here, like other game, besides fish. But fishing was very a very important part of our livelihood, and it still is today. They're always good. Always go up to Granny's kitchen on Friday evening and Friday night. I was up there last night, and they have the rainbow fish out on the buffet, and I always get 3 or 4 of them. Yeah. So, yeah, they very, very good. Very good.